Hello? I don't think we're on. I'm on the line.
Ready? Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is August the 12th, and this is a special Board of Supervisors meeting. We'll begin this morning with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all like to stand and join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and now I'd like to confirm that we have our supervisors attending by telephone. Can Madam Clerk please confirm?
Supervisor Gould?
Here.
Supervisor Johnson?
Here.
Supervisor Lingenfelter?
Here.
And Supervisor Angus and Supervisor Bishop are in person.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to begin this morning by a short presentation by our Elections Director, Mr. Alan Tempert. So, Alan, I'll turn the floor over to you, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you. I mean, elections is a dual role. It's the elections and a recorder, and Christy is going to come up and speak a little bit as well right now. She has some things, because the process starts actually in voter registration, early voting, then election day. So Christy would like to come up and talk a little bit, and then we'll go into what I'd like to talk about.
Okay, this is our Mojave County.
Good morning.
Order.
If you would humor me, I'd just like to be able to share some facts about the early voting process that happened with this primary. So the voter turnout was comparable to the state. Ours was 33.54%, and the state turnout was 35.06. We mailed out over 64,000 ballots by mail. There's currently 87.5 voters who received their ballot by mail. About 24.5 of those are independent voters. So the voter in a primary, when they're an independent, had to notify our office, respond to our correspondence of what party ballot they wanted. So I think that the difference between the number of ballots that were mailed out and the eligible voters, active voters that actually receive a mail ballot, that's where that number's lower there. There were actually over 2,000 voters that showed up to vote in person this election, compared to 1,700 in 2018. It's difficult to compare this election with 2020 because of COVID and, a midterm election. And 72% of the voters voted early, compared to the 70% in 2018. I think we saw the largest number that we've ever had of unverified signatures. Close to 500 ballots that we received by mail. We could not match a signature to anything that we had. Every single voter was contacted at least once. Some received 2 phone calls and a letter. But every voter, and they had the 5-day cure period to verify their signature with us. So at the end of the election, we wound up with 73 that we had to reject because we couldn't match the signature. And we had 32 ballots that the voters were also contacted. There were 32 at the end of the election on election night that were unsigned that we could not accept. We typically are able to keep up with the early ballots, but we really did a good job. So Monday before the election, every ballot had been accounted for, and the ballots that we counted after Election Day were the ones that came in late Monday afternoon after we had already done the export to the e-poll books, as well as 4,200 ballots were dropped off on Election Day. So that totaled approximately 6,000 ballots that we processed after Election Day. We had 342 provisional ballots. So with the curing period on Wednesday morning, we were able to send, Wednesday of this week, we were able to send all of the ballots to elections for tabulation. We made some changes to our early ballot process this year that I think helped with the success of the election. I wanted to thank you for the ability to have additional temporary staff. People stepped up and helped us at our early voting sites, as well as the addition of another full-time staff in our office. I think that kept us on track. We also had facilities do our delivery of the equipment to the early voting sites and pick that up, and that made a huge difference in time for us. So we greatly appreciate the assistance that they gave us. We also created a more comprehensive instruction manual for the temporary workers, as well as something that we will continue to do is myself and 2 other staff members went to the early voting sites and stayed with them throughout that first day of early voting to answer any questions, assist with processes, and I think that that was very beneficial. And I'd just like to thank the temporary workers and all the staff that helped make this primary a success. And I'm happy to answer any questions before Alan comes up.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Blair? Supervisor Johnson? Supervisor Lingenfelter, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Gold?
No, thank you, ma'am.
Supervisor Angus?
Just a quick question. So as compared with years in the past, the amount that came back that you sent out via mail, the permanent early voter list, and then that came back, was it equal? I mean, did you see less come back that way and then more being dropped off on Election Day?
There were, we still got quite a bit of mail, but comparing past elections, I think 4,200 dropped off on Election Day.
And how many were sent out altogether, did you say?
We sent out over 64,000.
Oh, okay, so it's a relatively small amount. Because it always kind of, and I think maybe the parties would have to do a better thing of this, but if you don't trust the mail, because we hear that, I don't trust the mail, then don't get on the permanent early voting list. You know, they have an opportunity 3 weeks before, 4 weeks before almost, for the early voting. So I think maybe we need to do a better job telling people what happens if they drop off. Because everybody, you know, like everybody I'm sure here got calls, like, why is it taking so long? And, you know, and the bottom line is I don't think they understand the system and we have to go through it. So maybe the parties can do a better job letting everybody know. Maybe we can put stories in the newspaper and give people the opportunity to say, well, maybe I'll go a week early and have my vote, you know, counted on Election Day. So that's it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And surprisingly, I got no calls about elections, and I think it's because our public information officer put out a couple news releases and our press releases, and I think that helped tremendously. So I want to thank Roger for doing that, and for you for providing the information for him to be able to put that information out. So
Thank you very much.
thank you, Christy.
Thank you, Christy. All right, hello, everybody. And thank everybody for being here. All right, I think I see friendly faces out there, I hope so. None of these people, they were part of our hand count board, you know, people that work for me part-time, you know, doing early ballots. I didn't even call them and tell them to show up, so I hope they have nice things to say, seriously. You know, if not, I'm in trouble. Okay.
Right, Alan, let me interrupt you. I wanted to point out that there are 14 people in the audience that traveled great distance to be here this morning, and we appreciate that. I see people from Mojave Valley, Bullhead City, and Kingman, so nice to have an audience when you...
It is nice, because the only time I've had a larger audience is when we did it during a regular board meeting than I can in general, you know, because of the timing. So, but thank you. And I got a couple of my staff member back there. Okay, we have a staff of 4, not large, but you know, they came to, it's about them too. Now I'm going to talk to you about, well, once again, first, thank you. I'd like to say, always say thank me for this opportunity to come up and speak with you. But I'm going to tell you, hopefully I answer all your, or most all your questions that you may have. If not, of course, you're going to toss them at me. That's wonderful. And I think I might even answer some things you didn't even have questions about, to be quite honest with you. But first of all, I got to start with this. Today is the start of my 21st year working for Mojave County and as the elections director. Today is the 21st day. Just happened to be hired, you know, 21 years ago today. And I'm very happy to be here. Now, I want to start into, what I'm going to do is, there's good things and bad things about everything. Always is, okay? And I just, a lot of stuff's going through my mind, and I just started typing things down, and it was running through my mind the last couple of nights, and so basically I'm going to probably do a little bit, you know, I just usually go off the cuff and stuff when I talk, but I'm going to be doing some reading too, okay? But what I want to do is, I want to start this conversation. I want to start this conversation with the word misinformation, which is the biggest threat to elections, has been, is now, and will continue to be. I'm going to tell you how that ties into a couple of things that happened on Election Day, okay? Misinformation, I love to say that, according to Webster, is incorrect or misleading information. It's that simple, okay? Intentionally spread misinformation. Now, the question is comes, how did the election go? Well, I think it went pretty well. For the majority of the people in the county, I think they're going to say, yeah, because they got to go and they got to vote, they got to cast their ballot, they walked out, everything was fine. But a smaller vocal minority, and that's how we all learn and get better, don't say so as much every election. But what I'd like to put it this way to you. Think about this, we pretty well, considering how complicated an election process is, we just don't call polling places up the week before and say, hey, can we use you? Call some of my poll workers. I got some back there. Hey, a week before, when can I come up to work? Oh, you can't today? That's okay. It's a huge process. It's a 6-month planning. It's a 6-month process. So what it is very complicated, and there's over 14,000, okay, which involves 13,461 square miles. And it involves 14,000 people on election day that were involved. Those who voted, those who worked, either at the polls or for me or what have you. So you got 14,000 people over 13,000 square miles in a 13-hour period to pull something off. It's a huge party to pull off for everything to work perfectly, okay? That's a way to start, that's the way I like to frame it. Now, good and bad. I'm going to start with the bad. That's what some people want to hear and others don't, but I'm going to do it because I'm going to go out on a positive note. Good. No, bad. That's it. Bad. The e-poll book printers. E-poll books are the electronic polling books. They're supplied to the polling places, and they check voters in. They're really cool. You know, like somebody say, when they work right, they're very cool. Okay, they streamlined this business unbelievably. Now, what I wrote down was, we have 150 new laptop computers, which are the e-poll books. They were purchased, replaced the ones that we had been in use since 2016. That's important, this part of that conversation. The process took 18 months from the time where they were ordered, received, configured by the poll book vendor, the hardware to the software, loaded, tested, deployed in the field on election day. It was a long process. The biggest part of that 18 months was 12 months to get the poll books into the country, to be quite honest with you. You know, the old chain, supply chain stuff and whatevers. Okay, so that's the starting point. Now, we had about 120 in the field that day out of the 150 that I have. And they were loaded, tested, okay, 140 in the field. And the issues with some of the printers not working were discovered at 6 a.m. right away when the first voters popped in. We did not know that the printers, we had no reason to believe that the printers weren't working. Printers were tested during on these computers during my training period. They worked then. But they didn't work on all of them due to this. This is what the vendor had told me. Now, the issues with the printers not working were discovered at 6 o'clock on our end, and I don't know how many were affected. I'm sorry, we started getting the phone calls. They were all resolved by about 10 o'clock in the morning. Not every poll book, not every printer was not working. Not every poll site was totally out of poll books that didn't have printers working. Okay? So, not all of them, but I don't know how many, because the phones were ringing. We're trying to get them resolved and walking people through our troubleshooters to have them fixed in the field. There was also an update that was pushed over through the airwaves through our vendor to fix this very problem that eventually took care of the ones that we didn't get to. Now, check-ins were focused using the e-poll books that the printers were properly functioning until the improper functioning poll books were fixed by election staff on election day troubleshooters. When all the poll books at the locations were affected, the poll workers printed. What happened is if they had to use a poll book that the printer wasn't happening, they took the receipt printed out of the printer, wrote the voter's name, wrote the ballot style they're to be issued, could still check the voter in, gave it to them and got the ballot style. I mean, they were still able to vote. Now, we may hear, well, people were turned away. Man, that's not what I teach. That's not what I preach. 3 separate times during training, in a 4-hour training session, we say, no voter shall ever be turned away, regardless. Now, some voters might have been told, hey, you know what, why don't you go up on top of the hill? You know, there's 4 places. I'm going to use Bullhead City as an example. I love using Bullhead City. I do, because we got 4 really cool locations, all in one big area of 20-some thousand registered voters, 8, 7, 6, whatever, right? And they can go to 4 polling places. Any one of these voters could have driven 2 or 3 miles and could have been told to do that. You know, go up there. They're working up there. But it took 4 hours to resolve. No voter should have ever been turned away, and I'm not going to say that some weren't. I don't know, okay? When I'm dealing with hundreds and hundreds of people working for me out there, I don't know. You know, it's a really wild day that goes on with lots of phone calls and answering things. A lot of other issues made that day, which I'll be addressing here, very wild. Now, this is Robus's explanation. Robus is our poll book vendor. I'm going to go problem, solution on every one of these couple of issues that I have, okay? Robus sent me, and he said, some of the receipt printers installed themselves with a different name, so when the e-poll book went to print, it couldn't find the printer. The utility drive provided should have fixed that problem. That's what we use when we program them. That and a few other, you know, jump drives to make the election on. But our instances did not specify that the printer had to be installed and powered on before running the utility, and the printer were not tested set up prior to the deployment. Implementation through a setup checklist will also help prevent and catch issues like this in the future. We will provide a checklist for future election setups, which will detail a complete listing. So they're taking responsibility, as I am too, that they were not all working. Okay? But there's going to be an improved checklist going into the future to make sure that indeed never happens again. We had problems with poll books. We have always had problems. They're computers. Every election to a point. Every single one of them. This was just the biggest one that I've encountered. Okay? Got to have a biggest. You got to have a smallest. Now.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Temper, if we ran a test before, did they print the day before you ran the test and then not that day?
Supervisor Johnson, they did not. I did not run the test. Okay, I did not. I had 30 poll books that I used for training. And the program I installed on those 30 poll books from the company for training, the printers did indeed work. I had no reason to believe when I finished deploying and putting the real database on that the printers would not work.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Supervisor Angus?
I've been hearing that in places in Bullhead or Fort Mojave, so the polls opened at 6, Those printers weren't working till 10, so for 4 hours. So what was had they been instructed on what to do should a printer didn't work? So the printers give the receipts, right? Is there any sort of manual way?
And they were instructed, and many did. I was really happy with what I had, but not everybody picks up that message when you train them. But I teach people to do that as a contingency plan.
What is the fix?
What?
What's the fix? What do they do?
They just simply printed, they used the printer, and what it didn't print on its own is what happened, and it has a voter's name and other voting information, really, in a ballot style. That's the two important things. That receipt is taken over to a ballot judge where they're handed a correct ballot with the ballot style. What they did is they wrote the voter's name, and they wrote the ballot style that was to be issued and handed it to them and sold them over to the ballot judge. The ballot judge then took that and said, okay, this is a Bullhead City C/D, and gave it to them. It's the same effect as it would have been printing out of the printer,
Right.
but it wasn't.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that voters didn't leave, that no one was being told to leave, but, you know, some people came before work. They couldn't hang around and wait for this. So how come it took so long to fix it? That's, you know, I'm just asking, it's just
I
my
got
sort
it.
of logic.
It was over the whole county. I have 7 troubleshooters out there.
Every polling place that
Not every
wasn't
polling
working?
place, but not every
4
area was
hours?
affected. But Bullhead's big, so there were numerous ones in Bullhead City that were not working. Lake Havasu is a large area with most of the poll books right between these places, and Kingman. No problems up in Littlefield, no problems up in the Strip, no problems up in, you know, Dolan Springs. No problems here, no problems there. Or if there was one, they could use the other poll book that they had in these 2 poll book places.
So what is the fix for the future?
The fix for the future is going through a more detailed list and making sure the darn thing prints. I wanted to print the receipt. I always did in my past practices. I wanted to check a voter in. And I was told by the company, Alan, please do not do that. You should not have done that in the past, okay? Because if you check a voter in at that particular moment, then we have to clear it out of the system and it makes everything look all funky. I said, okay, I have no reason to believe that those printers would not work because of what I did for training for 3 straight weeks with all those printers working with a different database, realizing that the new database that was installed for the election would have whacked out the printers.
That's why we hate computers.
That's why I hate computers, but I certainly wouldn't want to hand count everything. That's my computer thing.
Okay, so
All right.
that was personally one of my biggest concerns.
I got
That's the
it.
thing I heard about the most,
I got it.
and the lack of ballots. But go.
That's
goes
going to
on
be
your-
part of one of these bits, okay? All right. So that's the e-poll book stuff. The next one, ballot markers. Okay, ballot markers. Now, ballot markers, mismarking ballots due to bleeding through the ballot, as well as being illegal to use. Man, I heard a lot of that. A lot of phone calls that day. Got to realize, though, how many people voted at the polls? 13,512. I didn't get 13,512 calls. I got a good bit of angry calls. And a lot of that's misinformation. That's totally misinformation. That callers that call throughout the day explaining that was not true. We spent a lot of time doing that. Why it's not true. That if you mark one thing and it does bleed through, well, bleeding through, you can see through. It's a marker. Bleed through, see through, you can see it through the other side. It does not match up with any oval ever on the back side of the ballot or the front side. Ever, it's designed that way. And I know that for a fact. We had 173 ballot styles. I know that for a fact. I tested every ballot style, every race with a marker, the same marking pens. I had almost 700 in my test deck. I ran that dozens of times and it never missed. I shared a really badly marked ballot with a few of you this morning just to show you, and it hit dead on. It's no problems. Now, what I'd like to do, though, be quite honestly for you, is we're the only ones. I don't know where this information is coming up. I'm so sorry. I just got to say this. I have the ballots. I have the markers. I have the tabulation equipment. And I have the program to run it. Who else out there has that to tell me it's not working? Nobody. Not you, I'm sorry. Does anybody think that I would put bad things out there on purpose? I mean, we've been using these markers since 2016, all except COVID 2020 because of COVID not touching things, okay? They are the most efficient way of marking. There's no doubt about it, because election night, many, many, many people came in and chose to use a pen instead. That's okay. I'm not forcing anybody to use anything. But those who used the pen added on a couple of hours to our election night tabulation because the ballots were not completely marked with a pen, a ballpoint pen. My equipment kicks it out and says unclear mark. I look at that unclear mark and I see a vote for somebody, and I am required to duplicate that ballot. That ballot takes 5 minutes to duplicate. I duplicated hundreds of ballots on election night. Not me, but my staff doing so. For that very reason. And if a marker would have been used, that would not have happened. Clear as a day. But don't use the marker, use the marker, okay? We all got an option. Think about it, 80% of the people vote at home, not quite. And they use a pen, but they take a little more time filling things in. I found they come out better. They really do. You go to the polling places, they don't take as much time filling them out. I guess they're in a hurry, they're going to work like you said, Supervisor. I totally got that, you know? In a hurry, doing stuff, I got that. There's where the mismarks happen, and we have to fix them election night, and that's great. We do it. But that leads to that. Now the solution, okay? Tell me not to use them again. I'll make sure they're never at a polling place. Otherwise, I think they should be. But I'm telling you, I'm the guy who knows they work. That's all I got to say. All right? I'm going to move on to running out of ballots, okay? If that's okay now. Running out of ballots at the polls. That's not true. We didn't run out of ballots. We ran low, and I'm going to explain how that happens. We run low at some polling places of ballots. I'm going to use Bullhead City again. Once again, since I says I really dig it. I get a gazillion, I have to get a whole lot of ballots for Bullhead City. And I know about 50% of the people in Bullhead City vote at Hope United Methodist Church. And that would make 50% would vote at the other 3 locations. But that changes a little here and there, okay? It does, it totally does, okay? So I get plenty of ballots, and I got plenty of ballots, and I used my calculation off of the general election figures for ballots, and I distributed amongst all 4 polling places in Bullhead City, or Lake Havasu South 4 polling places down there, Kingman 3 in one place, 2 in another, and what have you, right? But I know I got people out in the field of troubleshooters that if we get low in one place for ballots, then I can send these people to pick ballots up from another location and take them somewhere. And that's what I've been doing. I've been trying to do that, and I've been doing that for quite a long time. Since 2016, I've been pretty successful at it. But what happened this time? 4,000 more people showed up at the polling location than they did a couple of years ago. 4,000 more people showed up. People were walking in with their early ballots, surrendering their early ballots for some reason, and that reason is they either don't trust the post office, or there's misinformation, I'm going to use that word again, that they will not count. I hear that all out there all the time. So whatever the reason is, but I got to be prepared for that, you know. And I don't want to say I totally, but I was. I also had backup early ballots in vehicles, but I could only get somebody from point A to point B so fast at certain times, you know. And I have them out on other calls taking care of printer issues, or I have them somewhere else doing something. And then, unfortunately, sometimes I get a call from a poll worker. Oh, we're down to our last couple. Well, I do teach, obviously, not obviously, but I do teach. Man, if you're running low, let me know in advance. I'm going to see what's wrong here. Solution. I'm never going to let that happen again. I'm going to get so many ballots. It's just truthful, okay? I've been trying to be a good custodian of the county's money, and I've been doing a pretty good job of balancing this stuff, okay? But you got to have a little trade-off now and then for that to happen, and no, it's never going to happen again. Ballots cost 25 cents a piece. I'm going to have a higher budget. It's going to come out. It's okay. It's the right thing to do. I agree, because I can't guess people's actions anymore like I could. As well. I never could, but as well. That's my solution. Shortage of poll workers. Something I didn't think about, but somebody just recently brought it up to my attention. Yeah, we always have a shortage of poll workers. Thank you, poll workers are right there, very much so. Okay? Especially have a shortage in August. Snowbirds are our biggest population of people that we use. By far. They're gone. They're coming in. They'll be back for the November. Many people don't want to work the primary because it's like a playoff game. It's not the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl's November. We get more interest, not more than we can use, more interest. We take every single body that we ever get to calls and we put them to work at a polling site. Unless we're fortunate to have a place that's well overstocked, that rarely happens. Really what happened is we aimed at getting 350 people to work the polls. We could only come up with 269. I submitted that in front of the board a month before the election as required. We ended up losing 45 people down to 224, and that greatly affected our operation like it always does. And our poll workers are absolutely phenomenal that they take and run with things that happen with them. It's not just because of our training. We do a heck of a job training. But you could take a group of people, get 4 hours. 4 hours. You're trying to teach them a whole life job, it seems like, in 4 hours. That's not possible, okay? We break it down into 6 distinct little things that have to be done and train these people specifically. And on the whole, they do a great job. People can't get volunteers to go out and be poll observers and watchers. You can't get people to do it. These are basically paid volunteers. Plus, we underpay them so incredibly bad. They're not here for the money. They're here to show. They're here to show, to do their bit. And they get abused. Just like I got abused and my staff got abused all day election day because of ballot markers. Okay? Nothing you can do about that other part. I got that. It happens. People were angry. But the shortage of poll workers, no, we weren't shorter than we normally are. Man, we try our best to get them. We try a billion different ways of getting things. We try to recruit high school kids. That doesn't happen in August because they're not around. That happens a little bit more in November. Okay? So if there was a shortage of poll workers, I apologize, but it's just something that we always run on the cuff with. But our solution is it going to be a little bit easier in the general because there are more people around and more people will show up. But it takes almost the same amount of people to running polling place overall, whether a lot of people show up to vote or don't. They still have those distinct things they have to do. The very last thing, I'd like to discuss good things. 49,412 people voted. Most were satisfied with their experience and didn't call my office to discuss it. That's pretty good. I'm happy for that. What else? The results are true and accurate. That's what we're here to say today. They are true and accurate. Now, I'm going to say one last thing. Boy, I wish, Jenny, couldn't you ever, like, turn this thing on and start beeping me out of here or something? Jenny? Yeah. Very last thing I got to say. This is really important, and I see some of the people sitting behind me. The security we have in place between the voter registration office with cameras and door locks and limited access in my office and how we transfer back and forth through a wall. From here to there is where my office is from theirs. We seal things up. We document things. We send 2 people. They send 2 people. They do the whole bit, right? This is all on camera. Everything that we're doing, we're processing ballots. The logic and accuracy testing, I've done 1,000,000 times. I do a public test. I had some people show up. Some of them are probably behind me right now. I hope they are. And they came out dead on. The Secretary of State's office showed up and ran 1,000 test deck, which I I don't know what they're doing. Comes out absolutely phenomenally perfect. And you know what really showed the end of it? The precinct hand count and validation of the early ballots. We had 9 wonderful political party people show up to audit and count last weekend, still fresh in my mind, today's Friday, Saturday and Sunday over 16 hours. They counted 16 hours. I'll end at this. They counted 1,900 ballots for 4 races. Took them 16 hours. They were dead on. They came across one discrepancy, and it was because we didn't adjudicate that ballot correctly. Somebody was a vote for 2. There was a line through it. We would have changed that if we caught it. Only change, and some of the people back here were part of that. All right, that being said, I'm so sorry, but this has been on my mind. I'm glad you asked me to come up. Do I got any other questions?
I have a question. If we did hand counting of the ballots, which some people are very much in favor of, would we still be counting ballots today?
Oh, yeah. 2.5 million races on the general election ballot in 2020. 20, 2.5 million races.
So in your estimate, how long would it take to hand
Months.
count?
I went through a hand count in a former job that I was at. We had to count every precinct again, a similar size county, more precincts, similar size. It took 4 months to count one race to make it all validated correctly.
Okay, so in today's world with our population the way it is, we are not getting away from computers.
I hope not.
It would be a big hardship, and people running for office, it would take months and months to find out who won and who lost. So I think testing the computers is the answer. Running low on ballots, that's going to happen, but you can send a runner from one polling place to another to replenish those. So shortage of poll workers, speaking from experience, I've been a poll worker several times in the past before I was elected to this position, and it's difficult to find people that will sit there from 6 o'clock in the morning until way past dinner time. You can't leave and go get food, so you count on people that are gracious enough to bring you food, and the polls that I worked, people did bring us food, and it was nice. That's all I have to say. Supervisor Angus.
Thank you. There was on July 1st, there was an accuracy and logic test. That's the test you were talking about with the Secretary of State coming up that I walked in on accidentally. Right?
We did have it on July 1st.
Okay.
Yes, we did.
So I got a question. Were those the same exact ballots used in that test that ended up we're using? I mean, they weren't different
Exactly.
ballots. They were the
exact
same
same ballots, the same pieces of paper. They are standard ballot paper throughout the whole country.
ballots. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just asking a
No, I
question.
know that. I'm excitable. No, not you, Supervisor. No. Thank you.
I think it's information, misinformation, but we have to do a better job as political parties and communicators, even in your office, to let people know. At this point, it's surprising that after all these years, and after 2020, everything went into hyperdrive, and everybody was very edgy and has issues. But one other thing, before the meeting, you showed us a ballot, and can you put it up so everybody could see it?
I can, if
because that
the
was
wonderful-
very interesting, and I want everybody here to see it.
Wonderful IT people. All right, turn it. Oh, it says top here.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Now, just let me show you this. Would you want to talk, or do you want me to say it?
No, you go ahead.
This ballot was intentionally, this is a ballot I just did in my office not too long ago. This ballot was intentionally marked heavy with the same ballot markers. It was intentionally check marks in
Alan, we can't hear you. You walked away from the microphone.
check marks in
I have a leash
ovals
on
and
you.
heavy. And there's even a spot that says 18 times. Steve went in that one dot for that race. The Secretary of State 18 times. He tried to get a hole in it. We have 2 holes in that ballot. You can see the back is bleeding through to the back. We'll use the word bleed. There's absolutely nothing that matches up, ever. They're designed not to do that. I ran this ballot through our voting equipment, and it came out dead on. Dead on. That's the ballot marker. There's 2 holes in there. So I want to let you know, these things are designed to do this. They're designed for pens. They're designed to make things work out. But basically speaking, I was planning on moving forward as we have in the past, because I think it's a great, unless I'm told otherwise. Okay?
I have a little bit of a solution maybe for the future, because I go to early voting and I use the markers. And you're right. I believe it fills in those holes better. It does. But why can't we have in that little, ridge there with the pens, a couple of pens that people can choose from?
That brought that to my attention too. And I'm also think I'm going to put a sign in that says,
Right.
it's your choice, or use your own.
Yeah. Because perception is a very, very important thing. And, if people haven't.
I totally understand. We will have it was on my plans.
Okay. I think that's all. And we'll make sure we have the ballots. I mean, these are things that seem simple fixes, and I get it. I mean, you judge the present year by years gone by, but in our atmosphere now, I think that is something that is not going to be possible. More people showing up. I think the general election is going to be crazy. So I hope that, all these things will be addressed, and I know they will. And thank you for doing such a good job, Alan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ellen, I have a question. Pinal County, bless their heart, I've been in the news lately, and they had some problems there, and the elections director was removed. But he was new, he didn't have any experience, and I'm just wondering, what kind of experience do you have? How many years have you been doing this?
21 years starting today.
And has that all been with Mojave County?
Every instance of it. I'm the longest acting elections director in the state of Arizona.
So you're old and experienced.
Oh yeah, I forgot to say, 20 years ago, 21, I didn't look this way. I forgot to say that with this beard and all this gray stuff. I wanted to say that, I missed that.
Have you, in all these years, have you ever ran an election where there wasn't any problems, whether
Never.
they be minor or serious?
Never had a flawless election, and there never will be.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Gold, do you have any questions for the presenter?
Thank you, Madam. Alan, you stated that a fix for the printer issue was pushed out over the airwaves. Can you expand on that?
I can. Okay, what we do is our electronic poll books, they're poll books, they're just a record of a voter registration database. It doesn't tie into voting, as in people tabulating, pushing ballots, or any effect on that. Now, that being said, all day long, the way the electronic poll books work is this. Somebody checks in at a voting location. That information is then sent through the MiFi system, through the Verizon system is really what we use. Comes to Kingman, comes to a place called the command center, gives credit for that person checking in, and it gets sent out to every other poll book in the whole county, so that person cannot go and check in somewhere else and vote a second time. That's the beauty of it. It's used all across the state and all across the country, that kind of technology. Now, to answer your question, what the vendor did was to fix this printer fix in the most efficient way possible. What they did from their location was to send out an update. It's called an update. Updates can happen at any time throughout the day under their control and our information. And like, for instance, and then it went and it helped fix some of the printer issues. Now, I know, for instance, I'll give you a little thing on updates. It ties right into it. The night before the election, updates of all the early ballots that were returned or updated that night into the poll book. So when the people get up in the morning to turn on the poll books the next time, all the updates have happened. That's pushed through the airwaves through Christie's information. So that's a very similar, I just want to use that as a similar analogy.
So these books are not connected to the internet via a telephone hardline or a cable system wire, but they're pushed out over the cell phone system?
They are not. They're pushed out over cell phone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Lingenfelter, do you have any questions or comments?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Johnson, do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alan, I had somebody call me because they didn't receive their early ballot. They might have been dropped off or something. And they were worried that they couldn't vote because they're handicapped. And I informed them they could go and that we would handle their medical needs by bringing a ballot out to them to vote at their vehicle. They got to the polling site in Havasu at 6:30, called the number, but they didn't receive an answer on the call. Do we man that 24-hour or during the election cycle?
Dude, that phone number comes directly to my office. It says, if you need assistance, call what? it has the phone number there. It's at every polling site, on a sign, in a cone, in a handicap accessible spot. Supervisor Johnson, at 6:30 in the morning, our world was really going nuts, so. And I had 4 additional people answering phones. I had them installed. They were part-time staff, and some I just hired on a month or so before to make this stuff happen. So if they didn't get through to us, I greatly apologize.
Okay, they were able to get their voting, and we made it possible for them. Everybody was really helpful at the site. The other question I have is, didn't we buy computers that can print out ballots for us?
We bought computers, they're regular, just HP laptops. Now, we do, in one respect, we do print ballots out using the Express Vote. I'm trying to see if this is where this is going. The Express Vote is that touch screen piece of equipment. It's a ballot marker, and we get a barcode that prints out of the electronic poll book, and it brings up the person's correct ballot style. Is that which direction you were heading?
Yes.
Yes, it's been that way since day one. It works magically.
Will that help with the running out of ballots?
Tremendously. That's another part of our contingency plan. If somebody our contingency plan for running out of ballots are number 1, don't run out of ballots. All right? Well, if I didn't distribute them properly, which it shows that obviously I didn't guess right, get ballots to the people is the first contingency from other polling places, from my troubleshooters, and extra ballots from the recorder's office that they did not use, which is a lot with the troubleshooters. Now, last case scenario, which is not worst, last case scenario is use the Express Vote. I have multiple Express Votes in some locations now because the board allowed me to purchase 12 more of them with HAVA money a year ago, approximately, a little more than a year ago. That is the one that has every ballot style on every. I would love to have more. And I know people that wanted more. And a gentleman down in Lake Havasu voted 900 ballots, and 400 of them were on the Express Vote. Not him personally, but people inside his polling place. So they're wonderful, but thank you, Supervisor Johnson. They are good.
And isn't the problem caused by the tremendous amount of independents we're getting registered, which is everybody's right to be whatever they want to be, but we don't know if they want to vote a Republican or a Democrat ballot, so you can't have, there's not much point in doing a whole lot of extra ballots when you have absolutely no idea which ballot they're going to want.
Yeah, but I got to try to be prepared. And boy, a whole lot of them voted a Republican ballot this time. That's why we were running short.
Yeah, that's a pretty easy guess there, Mojave. That's all the questions I had, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, County Manager.
Thank you. Just for the record, I think Alan, in his excitement, stated that he was the longest acting election director. For the record, he is duly appointed with full authority. He is not acting.
Oh,
So just to clear the record on that.
thank you.
Just a couple points to add, if I may. We met yesterday in preparation for this presentation and this meeting and to debrief, to look at the functions and identify any areas for improvements. And what I wanted to say to you are we've identified areas for enhancement. One is to enhance training going forward to ensure that we cover the bases and integrate into the training some of those lessons learned through this experience. That's one. The other, to utilize, to utilize press releases in advance, to time those in such a way that we provide reminders, deadlines of dates, when early election ends and so on, and in working with our communication director. We also discussed and committed to developing and producing a YouTube clip or presentation that provides more detailed information to voters that may have questions that can go on the county website to where it can be viewed anytime prior to an election. And certainly last but not least, to engage our communication director on election day even further than we have done to enable him to communicate with the media as efficiently as possible and allow our election staff to focus on the task at hand. So those are the 4 areas that we intend to move forward with to ensure that these lessons are that we learn a lesson from them and that we integrate into our process going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, County Manager. Do you have anything else, Mr. Tempert? Or
Not possible.
this concludes your presentation, and we appreciate it so much, and
And
I'm sure the public does as well.
I do want to say thank you for allowing me to go this whole time. Thank you. I mean that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we'll go on to the business of the day. The reason that we're here is to approve the adoption of Resolution 2022-145 to approve the canvass of the August 2nd, 2022 primary election per Arizona Revised Statute 16-645B. But before we do that, I'm going to allow those that wish to speak to come forward, and I'll call your name. You'll have 3 minutes to tell us what you want us to hear, and we'll comply with the Arizona open meeting law that requires you to limit your comments to this particular subject. So first will be Mr. Lewis Proudfoot. If you'll just come forward, state your name and city of residence.
My name is Lewis Proudfoot. I live in Kingman.
Thank you.
Gosh, sorry I didn't have a tie. I just couldn't get it tied on.
I'm sorry that I called you to be first, so you get to break the ice for us.
That's all right. I'm the second vice chair for the Mojave County Democrats. This was the first election cycle where I was a party official and not a volunteer. Volunteers do a lot of work, of course, as Alan described several times. But what the party officials do is different. And it certainly was for me. The first part that was different for me from a usual cycle was that I got to be in on the logic and accuracy tests. The Secretary of State was there with a 1,000 ballot deck that the director and his people had never seen before. He had his own deck of about 1,000 ballots that he had run and had put together through a painstaking manual process over several weeks. So kind of counting the votes in reverse, he had to know what was on the ballots, tabulated before he ran them through the machine to make sure the machines were programmed correctly. There was a fair crowd at the logic and accuracy testing, which I was happy to see. The Secretary of State's team and the director's team answered questions carefully, fully, patiently, sometimes frequently, making sure that everybody got the answers that they needed. We ran the tests. The tests were exactly right. That is, the machine counts, the machine tallied exactly with what the manual counts had been beforehand. That was good news. Alan described what happened during the day and by extension what happened in early voting. So I'll skip over that. For me, the most moving is probably the right word, part of the experience was the manual count. Here we were looking at actual ballots that real voters had made their decisions about. I mean, talking about the front line of democracy, that's it. So we counted those four races in the 2 precinct locations. I have to apologize to the team again that I picked the worst one. I'm sorry. But then again, I had to count it myself. So it is a lot of effort. It's a lot of concentration. We started at 8 in the morning, went to almost 7 o'clock that Saturday, and then 8 in the morning Sunday to 11 o'clock. We had, between the 3 teams, we had 2 or 3 of the candidates, we counted by candidate, where we were off by 1 or 2 votes. And a second count, manual count, came to the same conclusion. The one interesting one was the ballot that Alan mentioned that had been dual marked, that the machine made one decision on and we made a different decision on based on what was clearly the voter's intent. So we thought we were checking the accuracy of the machine, and thank you. What it was the machine was, just a few seconds.
Yeah.
The machine was teaching us that we are not very good at counting things, which I already knew from previous experience. In my view, the takeaway is that if people could go and see some of this, if they have doubts, get involved with the actual election process. Not voting, not campaigning. Get involved with actually having people vote and counting those votes. Look at the care, the respect, the devotion that people take care of those ballots at every stage along the way. And then to count for hours and hours and hours, and to realize that you're counting 4 races at 2 locations and not 36 locations and 50 or 60 races. That would literally take months. Quick calculation would take months to do. I am in favor of signing off on the canvass. I think we had a free and fair election, that it was accurate, and there was little to no room for any fraud at all.
Thank you,
very
Mr.
much.
Proudfoot, and bless you for spending all those hours as a volunteer and doing the
I was just
hand
one of
count.
several, man, just one of several.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next will be Mr. Ken Wilkins.
Madam Chair, I'll pass.
Thank you. Penny Davis will be next. Going on to Nancy Martell. Thank you, Nancy. Mary Lou Shaner. Please state your name and city of residence, please.
Mary Lou Shaner, Bullhead City, Arizona.
Thank you.
There you go. I'm a mother hen. I'm a district director, and I'm a mother hen with all
Can you
of
speak
my...
into the microphone,
Okay,
please?
here we go. I'm a mother hen with all of my people that work in our precinct, in our district. We had problems, and I don't know if you addressed them. We had the same problems in 2020. I'm having a problem understanding why they weren't resolved this year. Are they going to be resolved by November?
Mary, could you?
Okay, so it's hard for, I know, so I'm looking at him because he's a nice guy, but we're having problems. Why haven't they been resolved? The problem is we did run out of ballots in one precinct. We ran out from 2:30 to 4. We ran out of ballots. I don't know where you're getting your information from, but we did. We had people that were waiting. They couldn't vote. People couldn't vote. That's what we're here for. This should not have happened at all. The pens we had, we complained about them 2020. We had so many, I wasn't district director then, but we had people come into the office the day after the election complaining, tearfully complaining. We called, I don't know if it was you, because I didn't know who you were then, but they were complaining. Why has that not been changed? Why do they have to use those pens? Don't use them. That's where the complaints are coming from. I don't understand. I just don't understand why you continually want to do things that people don't want to do. That's my complaint. That's it. And we did run out of ballots. I'm sorry. From 2:30 to 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Shaner.
I'm Patrick Shaner from Bullhead City. I'm the first vice chair for the Republican Party in Mojave County, and I was at the logic and accuracy test on July 1st. I found it was very informative, and I was convinced that things were going to be pretty good in the count, and it looks like that had worked out. I appreciate, Alan, your presentation today. because it filled in a lot of the gaps of understanding that I had, and he answered just about all the questions I had. Now, I wrote down on the sign-up sheet that I am in favor of this agenda item, and I still am. I was when I came in the room, because I knew ultimately things were working out and the counts were going to be considered legitimate. So yes, the canvas is good. Alan, if you don't mind, after the meeting, I'd like to have just a couple minutes talking to you. Thank you. We covered lots of things at that test. I probably was one of the more talkative people, so Alan probably isn't happy about that, but that's okay. I have some technical information, you know, from my years and years of working for Motorola and Freescale. And when it was explained to me what we did to overcome the bleeding issue, you know, in terms of the scanners and everything, I totally believe it. I really do, because from my experience, I also know that machine counting is way better than hand counting in terms of accuracy. I get that too. I had a concern about the weight of the paper, because my understanding is we're supposed to be using heavy paper. Well, it turns out that law didn't pass this year. That was one of the laws that got vetoed and then got stalled in the legislature. Sonny Borelli had a very excellent sample ballot that they had, you know, a mock-up ballot that they had come up with. It was great. It was on 80-pound paper, no bleed possible. It was had watermarks, had a hologram, had microprint, and he told us at the time those ballots were 27 cents a piece. 27. Now, I'm quite shocked, really, to hear that the ballots that we use cost 25 cents a piece. I believe it, but it's surprising. And it also tells me that, you know, for 2 more cents, we could have had thick paper and hologram, but it didn't pass. I'm hoping it will. There was some bleed through. Now that kind of brings me to the last thing I want to mention, and that is it's about perspective. We've been spending 30, 40 years pounding into people's heads that you can't have any kind of extraneous marks or it will spoil the ballot. So I got all kinds of people coming to me who didn't know about our scanning technology, and they said, well, I just need a couple more seconds.
Go ahead.
You know, I mean, I understood that problem was not a problem. But when I've got a whole bunch of people that have been told by the millions don't have extra marks, well, it kind of goes against that, and that kind of shakes the confidence of the voters, okay? That's pretty much all I have. Hildy, you asked the questions I was going to ask, and I appreciate it. And Alan, you volunteered some great information that I also appreciate very much. After the meeting, okay? Just a minute.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shaner. Next will be Janet Wilson. Okay. Janet will be our final speaker.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Janet Wilson, and I live in Kingman, Arizona. I'm in favor of the resolution to approve the canvas. I think it's a wonderful idea. I have to tell you, as someone who worked for the elections department this year, eye-opening experience. I wish everyone could do this. Your staff are incredibly hardworking, dedicated people. From the chain of custody that I happened to pick up downstairs, people didn't know that the sheriffs fly in from Colorado City those ballots. Those ballots arrived before Havasus. The chain of custody is amazing. We receive them downstairs. We escort them upstairs because we give an oath of office that we will honor the system that's in place. It's pretty remarkable that all the election workers stayed and worked. These are not poll workers. These are people that are opening the envelopes, dumping the ballots, verifying. We don't verify signatures, but we verify that they're in the right location. It's pretty incredible what your staff does. You should be very proud of your staff. They are 100% professional, and it was a joy to work in an office that's so well run. I appreciate the time, Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open it up. Is there anyone else that would like to speak before we take it to the supervisors for a vote? Okay. Do we have any comments or questions from the supervisors? None from Supervisor Angus. Anyone on the phone? Supervisor Gold?
No, thank you, ma'am.
Supervisor Lingenfelter?
No, thank you.
And Supervisor Johnson?
Nothing, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'll call for the vote.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the adoption of Resolution 2022-145 to approve the canvass of the August 2nd, 2022 primary election per ARS 16-645B.
And I will second your motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.